Hey everybody, welcome, Twitch-based viewing public, to another episode of Ouroboros Studio Streams Design. Today we will be updating our dashboard on Twitch before we go any further. But then after that, everything's fair game. We might get a little crazy. It's more likely, of course, that instead we get into doing a little bit of design work, which we've been neglecting as of late due to our pressing need for better UI. It's more likely, assets. Of course, that and those pressing UI assets will be returned to shortly, but I figured it was worthwhile to bring in a little bit of perspective to the encounters that are going to be happening for the player and ways that we can circumvent our limited AI resource budget. The AI dilemma. My thought is that what is going to end up happening is that I'm sorry, I have so many links open. Okay. Bestiary. Right. So here's our dilemma. We've got about 2 to 2.5 months left of work on the game. And in that time, we need to develop a number of things. We need to get our combat build to the point we want it to be at. So let me create a list for you guys. These are my UI notes, these Valley notes, and these are Game Jam 1 notes. Let's go ahead and grab the Game Jam 1 notes. Still need to update our FAQ. I apologize for not doing that before. Gosu Skills TV, welcome. Join us. So here are the things we need to get done. I'm going to go ahead and just grab out some space. Here are the things we need to get done, and here's what I'm going to attempt to do to solve each of those problems. I'm posing them as puzzles to figure out, rather than as insurmountable issues that can't be solved, because I think that part of being a good designer is trying, even when there isn't really a solution, to manufacture one. Because you've created the scope of the game by doing your design work. So it's also your job to shrink it wherever you can without really impinging on the player's experience. So here are our issues. We've got until midway through October, I think. Mid-Oct is the demo deadline. What we need are encounters which challenge Hello there, Leonardo. You look wet. I am. I just finished a shower. Challenge the players' skills as they progress. And we also need interactable D zones. So that thing we were working on, that town that Cody was working on. Let me go grab the image of that real fast. This is what a D zone looks like. That's not it. Might be in show and tell. Here it is. This is what a D zone will look like. For those of you watching along, actually, I can't quite share this one yet, but as soon as I can, I will. Anyway, isn't it though? He's done a really fantastic job. So you'll be interacting with this, but we need to make that fun. It needs to be like a point-and-click adventure style interaction, not just clicking on buildings, but clicking on things and having them be meaningfully interacting with the player. Otherwise, we should just do a list of things, places in the town that you can interact with, because it wouldn't be paying off to click on the locations. So we need interactable D zones that challenge, that maybe with light puzzling elements, point and click must be fulfilling and enjoyable. So we need that. How about events that change over time? Yeah, that's something that we would like to include as well. Like, for instance, if you leave this town and you don't clear out all of the people who are there attacking things, if you were to come back, then the town might be absolutely wasted. And we'd have to do a separate D zone for that, but the places that you could interact with would be different, and the whole look of the town would be changed. That's something that we want to bring into the final product, but we're not sure if we can afford for in the demo. Certainly time of day is something that we're looking into as well, but we don't know if we'll have time to do a second screen of this either. We need at least 2 interactable D zones, at least 2, with the primary one being Valley, and then we need a smaller one. That way we can give the player a look at what a full D zone is like and what a smaller one is like. We also need node-based travel puzzles, where you have enemies that are on the map, and as a player you want to maneuver around those enemies, or you're incentivized to maneuver around those enemies. So we need node layouts. We need the combat build to be fully bug fixed and UI corrected. These are the necessary things that we need. At least also, not really from a design perspective, but we need our dialogue trees implemented, sounds implemented, character portraits for dialogue scenes implemented. Right. I mean, we've developed a lot over the last 10 months. We faced a couple of setbacks. One of them was that our initial programmer that we hired, and this was my fault. As a manager, I should have been more aware. I should have taken it upon myself to be more diligent about keeping up with the code base and learning enough to know that we were being defrauded, but basically took the money and ran without ever giving us a code base. So we were months behind on our code when Christian came in and started helping us and working with us. So we've been trying to come back from that ever since, because we had an asset backlog. And I mean, all of these features, plus we need testing and bug fixing time. Yeah, yeah. It sucked, and it was gut wrenching, and it happened right around Christmas time. So, no one on the project was happy. It was essentially, a third of our total development time that we've had was just like swooped out from underneath of us. But we've been on track ever since, and we only were supposed to have budget enough to get until May. Now we have budget to go through into October, which is why we have an October deadline. I'm talking to the team soon about ways which we might go about prolonging um, our deadline and pushing things back a little bit more, giving ourselves a bit more time to get a demo that will fully represent what it is we'd like to do with our game. Um, yeah, oh god, we'd love help with testing. Leonardo, if we had any more money to devote to anything, I would probably take you up on that offer, but we really don't. Like, we've got just enough with everyone that we have working on the game with cramped hours. Like, one of the issues with our specific development is that I can only really, from a budgeting standpoint, afford to pay people up to about 40 hours a month. Um, and everything else that they do after that is paid back in rev share. Um, and that'll be like at the completion of the game 3 years from now that we can start paying back in rev share. Steam game. I see what you're saying. Um, yeah. Huh. I think I can hear myself. Yeah, I could. Yeah. Anyway, there are a lot of things to do. And because there are a lot of things to do, the AI for encounters can't be as, fully featured as we'd like it to be. We can maybe save up for really good AI for one or two encounters, but in between, the enemies are going to have to be fairly AI. They're going to have to work with rudimentary AI and still feel fulfilling for a player to fight. So that's our design challenge. Um, and in order to make that work, I thought about a few things that we might do. Um, the first solution I came up with, and I think it's probably the best one that I've come up with so far, not saying there's not a better solution hiding somewhere, but the first one uh, is to create enemies that work off of um, passives primarily, so that when, and I'll do like a little battle grid over here. Pretend that's the front row, and actually I'll make that a lighter color. Uh, um, green and then purple. Okay, so pretend this is the front row, middle, back. We're just going to reverse this on this side. Should probably have remembered which colors I was using. That would have made it easier to color match these. Just pick a lighter shade here. And this one needs to be lighter as well, but just barely. Okay, so when you're doing combat in our game, there's a front row, a middle row, and a back row, and you allocate your units based on that. So if this is my character, and he's a melee character like a tank or something like that, he's going to occupy the front row generally. In order to hold the front row so that it doesn't get advanced on by your enemies, you have to have one person on it. Part of the primary strategy of the game is getting your opponent's tanks to drop low enough that they need to retreat to the row behind them. Once you get everyone to retreat to the row behind them, the front row disappears, and the middle row becomes the front row, and the back row becomes the middle row. So you've compressed the space that the enemy has to work within. Because of that, there are a number of things that we want to encourage the player to do in order to learn that that's the optimal strategy. At least at first, it's going to be the optimal strategy. There will be encounters in which you want to take out the back row of guys first. But because the Cavalier, the primary character that the player will be playing for the majority of the demo, because the Cavalier doesn't really have all that much ranged capability, we can't design encounters that revolve around that until later in the demo, or perhaps not at all within the demo. We need to be designing encounters that push you on the offensive and enable you to push enemies back. Yeah, it can seem good if you add difficulty levels, but by percentage, for example, fighting a group of enemies that is 130% of the expected best moves again. I guess you have different results. Well, what I was thinking, if you guys are familiar with Hearthstone, the way that Hearthstone creates complexity is it makes you consider your options between trading off your minions into theirs or hitting their face, hitting their life points down. So every time that you go to utilize your minions, the guys you put on board, you're having to make a choice. Do I try and reduce their health, which is the primary win condition, or do I try and reduce their board, which enables me to do more damage all at once, essentially? What we'd want to do here is create a system somewhat like Hearthstone, in which there are targets that are higher priority than other targets. And the way which I see that happening is, it might not be that complex. So complexity through your play. Kirby, do you love me? I don't know. I don't know enough about you to love you, Leonardo. I think you're a cool guy. I think we love all of our followers. But I don't know if I'd write you guys Valentine's Day cards or anything. So complexity through your play. Gosu skills. I think yes. I think the answer is yes to your question, but I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. Like, what you're saying here is you can add difficulty levels by percentage. So, like, it's unlikely that certain enemies will have a certain move, but if they do, they're harder than others. And I agree that maybe if that's what you're saying, that's a good way of varying enemy encounters and making them feel more meaningful. But it also means that every ability that I design in that way has to be implemented. Whereas if I create characters that have passives that proc off of a certain character being on the field, for instance, such as if I have a soldier on the front row and there's a bannerman on the front row, the soldier unlocks a passive and becomes stronger because that bannerman is there. Then the player, if they read through and see that that's occurring, will prioritize the bannerman first. And that's, I think, what we're going to try and do, is we'll introduce encounters where there are just swordsmen to start, or spearmen, or a mix of the two. And each has its own strategy that's preferred for dealing with that unit. And then we'll add complexity by putting another block, basically, another puzzle piece into it. We'll add the bannerman next, and then we'll add archers, and then we'll switch it up so that there's an archer-heavy encounter with a bannerman in the middle